First things first, I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. This right here is Nick Wright. Somehow, someway, we made it to Friday, and we have a fantastic show for you today because football is in full effect. Training camps all over. Aaron Rodgers thinks his Packers are being overlooked. Baker Mayfield and OBJ are already looking pretty good together in Cleveland. Wait till you see some of the action from yesterday. But we start the program with the most scrutinized flight manifest yesterday, that of the Dallas Cowboys. Most of the team boarded a plane from Dallas to Oxnard, California, side of the Cowboys training camp. One notable absentee, Ezekiel Elliott. So much talk the last couple of days about whether he'd be a holdout or not as he awaits a contract extension. Well, he was a no-show yesterday on that plane. Now, he still has the opportunity to show up today in order to officially avoid a holdout. But, Cris, I'll start with you. What do you make of Ezekiel Elliott not being on the team plane yesterday?
I don't make anything of him not being on the plane because the option of him not traveling with the team, providing your own transportation, getting there, a number of players always are going to take that option. But with the fact that of a potential holdout, that he's not happy with his contract, the flight is not a big deal. It's what he decides to do. He's got two options. He either not show up to camp and stay firm to his to wanting a new deal, or he can go to camp and tell them, I'm not going to participate in the games because I don't want to jeopardize or get hurt. He wasn't going to play that much in the preseason anyway. But your teammates respect that more so. The teammates aren't going to say anything about you holding out, but they really respect you being there, getting the work in, because you're not setting the team up and yourself up for disappointment, especially that first month of the season if you miss all that time. But as far as missing the flight, it's not required for him to be there because the conversations have begin to escalate. The rumor that he might not show up, that makes it a bigger deal. But for the players and for me and what I think Zeke's going to do, it's not a big deal.
So I'm really glad you brought up the teammates and how they're going to react to what Zeke decides to do, either in not showing up, but letting the team know I'm not going to play in the preseason games, or I suppose it might be on the board. Maybe the least likely is, no, I'm going to show up, be a full go, whatever you need from me, I trust it gets done. In that, typically, players don't count other players' money. They know, listen, it's a business. But there are two guys.
Well, players, no, let me correct you. Players count other players' money. You're just not supposed to talk about it.
Okay, fair enough. So that might be the better way. They don't publicly count other players' money, even if in their own head. They know what the scoreboard says. Mm-hmm. Dak and Amari, the team has publicly said those guys have to get new deals and are getting new deals. Dak and Amari both only have 1 year left on their deals. Zeke's got 2. And Dak, unlike Amari and unlike Zeke, was not a first-round pick and has never been paid. Dak Prescott has made less than $3.5 million in his entire football career. That is less money than Zeke is scheduled to make this season on a contract that he thinks has him underpaid. So these guys have seemed very close since they were drafted together. They have been the key pieces of this new era of Cowboy football. And Dak, I'm sure, is expecting a contract himself before that first game of the year against the New York Giants. I do find it interesting what potential locker room politics, even if they're able to keep it quiet, happen if Zeke attempts to cut the line almost, where Amari's got 1 year left, Dak's got 1 year left and has never been paid.
He's got 2 years left.
Zeke's got 2 years left and was a top 5 pick. So he might not be being paid what he feels he's worth, but he is still, even under his rookie deal, one of the 10 highest paid players on that football team. He makes more money than Dak Prescott, and Dak Prescott's never made any real money. So that is something to me. So you can watch the football part of it. We know the Cowboys without Zeke, to me, they go from fringe Super Bowl contender to fringe, if at best, playoff contender. But also how this affects the locker room when Zeke, with 2 years left, tries to go to the head of the line as far as getting a new deal.
It's interesting because a lot of players were already interviewed about him not being on the plane. Almost everyone said it's not a distraction. Whatever it is, whether that's the truth or whether that's just, everyone sort of giving the team motto out. But why would he show up for camp but not be on the plane? What's the message that sends? If he's going to show up, whether he plays in games or not, why would you not be on the plane?
Well, for one, we assume that that he was going to take the flight the way he's done his rookie year, his second year, third. No, we don't know that. The only reason why we're making a big deal of the flight is because he talked about his contract. So now we're going to make a big deal about the flight. Besides that, who else was on the plane? Who else was missing from the plane?
Well, I think the question is for people that haven't reported to training camp, and you explained this a bit before the show.
What is the deal with the flight?
So let's just say Zeke had already gotten his new deal. You said he still might not take the flight, and you were saying
because it's not required,
and because
it's not mandatory to everyone fly with the team. All right? They don't have the typical training camp situation where they're in California and their home base is there in Dallas. So they have correct. They've been doing this for years. It's not like they just moved to Oxnard. The players have had the option as far as traveling with the team. They'll provide that, which they must. Or you can go by yourself.
But you were saying before the show, one of the reasons you might travel by yourself is because you, as simple as you can bring more stuff.
You can bring more personal items.
Right. Like there's a lot of just things that we probably don't. We add a little palace intrigue to everything here because there is the contract talks looming. I hadn't even thought about it. It's just easier to bring the stuff you want. If you want to bring your own personal mattress, like to training camp.
What if you want your
that.
car there? You either get your car shipped or you have someone drive it up, do something like that. Just as simple.
So those types of almost just logistical reasons for it. But the other element for the Cowboys is usually when a player holds out or is potentially holding out, that's the player and management. There's the middleman here might be Jason Garrett. And the reason I bring that up is Jason Garrett didn't get no contract extension either. Jason Garrett is going into the final year of his deal. Jason Garrett and his future with the Dallas Cowboys, he knows this is a critical season for him, maybe the most critical season he's had since the year before they went 12-4 when he was firmly on the hot seat after a few 8-8 seasons. So I do wonder if Zeke doesn't show up, if Jason Garrett has a conversation with Stephen Jones about, listen, what's happening here? What do we think is how this is going to end? Because he knows with no Zeke, this Cowboys team can't reach its full potential. And if they don't do that, he probably won't be the head coach of the Cowboys this time next season.
All right, well, there's a lot to get to here. We'll have Bart Scott out in a little bit, although Jason Garrett seems like he's been on the hot seat for the last 4 or 5 years. Take a break. Coming up, much more football. Hey, are Aaron Rodgers and the Packers underdogs this year? That's next on First Things First. That is next, and you can always check us out on the Fox Sports channel on SiriusXM. We're back right after this. Back here, First Things First. We'll talk some Aaron Rodgers in a second, but first, Anthony Rendon backhands the grounder down the third base line and throws out Raimel Tapia while falling into foul territory.
Now, that was a great throw there. We showed one of these the other day. The guy was running in slow motion in quicksand. He had a guy that could move out.
Rendon is becoming a regular on But First.
High school basketball, Huntington Prep junior guard Jimmy Gatwick doing the under both legs dunk during the game.
Jimmy, now you can't be doing that. This is one of the nastiest in-game dunks I've ever seen.
Class of 20. So he
puts it in his left hand.
17 years old, maybe.
Goes up under his thighs. Oh, that's amazing. What's some hang time? And
someone sent me other videos of him in warm-ups. This kid is a leaper.
All right, here we go. NFL training camp underway. Arizona Cardinals air raid offense. Kyler Murray to Larry Fitzgerald for the one-handed catch while falling out of bounds.
Your guy, see.
Yeah, I hate to rip him apart. Kyler got to stop patting the ball. You see, he starts off to his left. He didn't like the guy over there. Then he comes back to the right, throws one to Fitzgerald. The DB missed it. The ball's behind him. DB should have intercepted that. Larry makes a spectacular catch.
That's the part we should focus on. Fitzy. And what is this, year 34?
Man, my bosses tell me, Chris, what do you see? Okay. That's what I see.
Here we go. Cleveland Browns, OBJ, a spectacular catch on the sideline.
Made a bunch of these yesterday. We were seeing these videos tweeted out by people at practice by the Browns. He gets both feet and a knee in bounds.
He's happy to be playing football.
Precise route running.
Building that chemistry. Exciting things happening in Cleveland. You could see in some of the interviews they were doing yesterday, him and Jarvis Landry, building on what they've been doing since they were kids. Freddie Kitchens.
It's exciting, man.
Excitement is building for the start of football in Green Bay this season. Aaron Rodgers is healthy and motivated. Packers have a new head coach in Matt LaFleur. And after 2 days of training camp, there is seemingly no tension yet between the two. Aaron says, why should there be? The relationship is growing and the two are friends. However, he says adjusting to a new coach will take some time.
A lot of times when you have a coaching change, you have to go through the struggles of, learning and starting over almost. But I think what Brian has done with our roster and the guys that we have coming back, I think, we have a chance to compete. And again, we're in a good spot, too, because nobody's talking about us. Some of the most dangerous teams, I thought, from our years are when everybody's talking about every other team out there except for us, and we can kind of come at our own pace and surprise some people in the beginning.
All right, Cris, when you look at what the Packers have, when you look at the coach and you look at the quarterback and then you see how they're going to fill in all the pieces, what do you think the biggest key to success for both the quarterback and the coach will be this season?
Well, first, to address Aaron, what he's saying, the reason why people aren't talking about them the way they are some other teams is because he's been hurt. And with him being hurt, they are not a playoff team. They are an afterthought in the NFL under the previous regime because they didn't have a defense that was capable of stopping a nosebleed, and they didn't have an offense that was capable of doing anything without Aaron Rodgers playing spectacular. So, Aaron, you got to take some of that blame yourself, being nicked up the last 2 seasons. That's the reason why. Now, the excitement should be they've changed their defensive personnel. They've changed from a 43 to a 34. You can believe they're going to be more physical. They're going to get after the quarterback. They got tremendous amount of draft capital invest in their secondary, which I believe is going to surprise some people. So it's a different Green Bay team. They're going to play a different style. They're going to be a little more rugged so they can win games, not just Aaron Rodgers making comebacks, throwing Hail Marys late in games. They have a variance. They have other pitches they can throw, and I believe from an offensive standpoint, they're going to try to get some type of running game to support Aaron Rodgers, which they've never done on a consistent basis. So those are the things I'll be looking at when I'm watching the Packers, when they surprise some people, because that defense should be a lot better than it has been, and it will be a lot more physical, the overall attitude that they're putting out there. I believe that's what people will see.
We've talked throughout the offseason that for the Packers to get back to where a lot of people think they should be every year, which is Super Bowl contender, they are going to have a much better defense than they've had the last few years. But to Chris's point, they are not in the game without Aaron Rodgers being great. And the last year Aaron Rodgers was great was 2016. He individually has not had, by his standards or really by today's quarterbacking standards, a great season since 2016. Not coincidentally, that's the last year he was healthy. In 2017, they were 4-1 going into that Minnesota game. And on the first offensive drive of the game, Anthony Barr falls on him, pops his collarbone, and that season is over. It was a wrap from that moment forward. Last year, and this was underrated during the season, he suffered a knee injury in the first game of the year against Chicago.
I thought he was done for the season when he got injured.
It looked like he thought he was done for at least a couple months when he was going off the field, so just despondent and upset. Now, he came back.
They win the game.
Channeled greatness. They win the game against Chicago, and I think that made people think, oh, he must be fine. Right. We saw in his play over the next couple months, he wasn't fine. He couldn't roll to one direction. I don't remember which, but it was part of his greatness has been his ability to roll out of the pocket and make plays on the run. That was totally removed from his game. He all of a sudden threw the ball away more than any quarterback in football because he was not able to escape, and they had a bad season. So the first key is Aaron Rodgers staying healthy. Like that gets them in the game. Now, to win the game is the defense, is them having a better running game. And it's really interesting. This year, you've talked about it for, I feel like, 8 months. It's the NFL's 100th season. They are starting their 100th season with not the Super Bowl champs, but the oldest rivalry, Green Bay against who? Chicago, the team they started with last year where Aaron got hurt. This will be on Thursday Night Football. Like, it's an opportunity to start fresh, new head coach, new everything. But his ability to play not just all 16, but a healthy 16 is the most important part for their season. Because the last 2 years, it has not happened, and that's why they've been out of the playoffs the last 2 years.
So if he's healthy and they've shored up this team as best they can before the season starts, then the big question that the media is going to be hounding everybody on is the relationship between Aaron Rodgers and obviously Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur came out yesterday and said the last thing we ever want to do is send a quarterback out there who is uncomfortable with what they're doing. Is that LaFleur maybe deferring a little bit to Aaron Rodgers, saying, okay, we had a lot of offseason stuff, but when it actually gets started, I know you know what you're doing. Is that a sort of respect move on his part? Because how important is that relationship going to be to their success?
Well, I think Matt LaFleur has enough confidence in himself, and the reason why the front office hired him, because they thought he can handle Aaron Rodgers. He's talking about just like he would talk to any other quarterback. Even if he had a rookie quarterback, he would be telling us it is not in our best interest to send a quarterback out there with things he's not comfortable with. That's his job, to get the quarterback comfortable with the things that they like. Not the things that just he likes, not the things the coordinator likes, but a combination, a collaboration. That's the best offenses in the league. The quarterback, their personnel being considered, and the coaches coming up with the plan. And I believe that Matt will do that. A little side note. Aaron said in there, Matt and I are friends. I played a long time in the league. I wasn't friends with none of the coaches. Now, my teammates in Minnesota used to tease me and say that I was one of Denny Ryan's. I was Denny Ryan's son. Denny Green's son. And in Buddy Ryan, we had in Philadelphia, there was a group of guys that they were Buddy's guys. And I was one of those guys. But you see, he cut me. So you can still, as one of the guys, you can still get cut. So, but I've never been friends. None of the coaches. I'm talking about even guys who I had played with. Once they went over to coaches, I wasn't friends with them. It's just an interesting choice of words. Aaron said, me and Matt are friends.
I think it's more than interesting. And I think, I'm glad it keyed you, because it keyed me as well. To me, it is in a beneficial position to be able to say, I'm friends with my boss. It's, to me, a bit of a power move in a way that, like, hey, we're going to talk to each other, not like boss subordinate, but like friends. And how do friends talk? They don't take orders. They discuss things. And so I think Aaron, while I'm not trying to read too much into it, I found it interesting as well that Aaron's saying, listen, Matt and I are friends. And so we'll be able to go through these types of things. I don't think it's necessarily bad, but I also think when it's a rookie head coach and a young head coach, and you're Aaron bleeping Rodgers, it is we're buddies. And so, yeah, like buddies, because your concern with the Packers is LaFleur is a system he knows. That is a system very different from what Aaron's used to doing pre-snap, used to doing throughout his career.
Aaron seems to have control. He wants control at the line, and that sort of parts ways.
And he probably should have a lot of control of the line. But when you phrase it as, hey, this is my friend, we'll discuss it, it might remove some of the agency from the head coach in that regard.
I used to have a wide receiver coach, and I used to run a route a certain way. And then the guy behind me with no experience, young guy, he tried to run the route the same way. Coach went up and corrected him, said, don't run it that way. He said, well, I was watching Cris. And that's what Cris said. Cris can do that. He can do it in pressure. He can do it on the road. He can do it clockwork. He said, you won't be able to do that against bump and run. You won't be able to break that angle like that. And the reason why the coach let me do it that way compared to everyone else was I was the only one who could do that. And when you get someone like Aaron Rodgers, you have a certain set of rules, principalities. These are the things we're set on. And then you see a guy do something. That's a coach's job. The kid's job is to get the coach's attention, do something he's never seen. Then it's the coach's job to get that player back in that same situation to repeat that.
Harness it.
And that's what they will do. They will collaborate on this. It doesn't make sense to have someone like Aaron Rodgers and think you can call a better play in your headset on the sideline than Aaron Rodgers with all the experience. He should have the same latitudes the best players in this game have to be able to change the play and get into an instant compared to going on the sideline, looking at the computers and everything and making adjustments.
All right, we'll have to see how this one plays out. So let's take a break. Head to another team after this. Coming up, are the Steelers making a mistake committing to Mike Tomlin long-term? Not committing to him long-term. That's next on First Things First. On Wednesday, some of soccer's biggest names, including Wayne Rooney and Zlatan Ibrahimovic, joined forces to battle Atletico Madrid in the MLS All-Star Game. You can catch the action 7:30 Eastern on FS1 and the Fox Sports app. Time now for Say What? This summer, Josh Norman went running with the Bulls in Spain, a daring feat for a fearless player. His head coach, Jay Gruden, was asked about it yesterday. Say what?
Josh Norman jumped over a bull. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I knew the bull wouldn't hit him. He avoids contact. No. Just kidding, Josh.
That's a good joke.
That was funny.
That's a good joke for friend of the show, Jay Gruden.
It's a good joke, but the truth of the matter, it's not Josh Norman.
No.
Because Josh will come up and tackle you.
Oh.
He is one of the better tackling corners and will force you to fumble the ball. It's always around that football.
He's not, to continue the analogy, he's not an Olay corner. He will actually go and get in your face, absolutely. But Jay Gruden, man, his seat's awful hot right now. Jay Gruden, he needs a good season either from Haskins, Jenna's guy, Case Keenum, somebody, whoever's starting quarterback there. And Josh Norman.
Yeah, he needs to worry about his left tackle.
Oh, yeah. Get him into camp.
Stories to start your morning. Big news out of Dallas. Ezekiel Elliott did not board the team plane to training camp yesterday. He does have until this morning to report before officially becoming a holdout. Nick, how do you expect this to play out?
This is a really tough one. I think the smartest move would be for Zeke to take Chris's advice, which is to show up but let them know I'm not playing in the preseason games. If I had to make a prediction, it's that Zeke won't be there today. I don't know if it'll be an elongated holdout, but he knows he's got to jump a couple people in the line to get paid. Dak and Amari are next on their list. He wants to be next on their list. This could be tough for Dallas with their best and arguably most important player.
Well, he's their best player. Now, is he their number one priority? And Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones are going to have to let Zach know that, because, man, I wouldn't play this year if I was him. Given the other money they have to dole out, I wouldn't play. I'd go to training camp, let them know I'm not playing. They're getting ready to give a quarterback $25 million. I'm a lot better than him. They're getting ready to give Amari Cooper $15 to $18 million. I'm better than him. Yeah, I jumped the line, but there's a reason why. Because I'm the most talented guy you got here. I am your quarterback. You don't have no season without me. If I get hurt, your season's over. We talk about Aaron Rodgers. If I get hurt, I'm Aaron Rodgers here. Our season's over with. That's what I would hold firm to that.
All right, moving on to the Cleveland Browns. They opened up camp yesterday.
That was a hot one there. That one just came out.
Odell loved every second of it, shined, making some signature spectacular catches. Beckham said, quote, "I feel like I belong." See, was this a precursor of what's to come?
Oh, no, this is going to be exciting. This is not hype here. We got one of the most talented young quarterbacks in Baker Mayfield, and we got already a season under his belt. It's not as if he just got drafted like Kyler, all this mystery. No, Baker Mayfield is here to stay. And Odell Beckham's one of the most exciting receivers that we have in the league. Given everything else they have on that offense, it's going to be exciting. They should be a top 5 offense. If they're not, a lot of things have gone wrong.
The Browns, I predict, are going to join the Patriots and the Cowboys as one of the 3 most discussed teams in football, because they're going to be really good and they're going to be really interesting. Because Odell, and I say this in a friendly way, he's a little crazy. Baker's a little different. They got enormous personalities, enormous expectations for the first time in forever in Cleveland. And I think they're going to have a lot of really cool highlights like this one. I think we'll be talking about the Cleveland Browns almost every day this season.
All right, moving on to Arizona now. First overall pick, Kyler Murray, started his first training camp yesterday. Cardinals putting all their stock in Murray after trading away last year's first-round pick and Josh Rosen. Murray said it's his job to make people believe in the Cardinals' new offense. Nick, will Kyler be a success from the start in this league?
That's going to be very, very difficult given the talent that's around him, that the offensive line that was far and away the worst in football last year. I am rooting for him, and one thing I do think he has working in his favor, man, I don't think anyone has said Kyler Murray's name outside of the state of Arizona in the last 3 months. He went #1 pick of the draft. We talked about him all leading up to the draft, and now not a lot of noise, not a lot of hype, and I feel like that helps him as he tries to do something no one's ever done, which is be a star quarterback at that size in this league.
Yeah, it'll get quiet until those first preseason games. There's a number of problems this offense has had. Pass protection, air raid was not very good. As far as getting guys into space when they take away your main receiver, they weren't very good at that. So not only Kyler, but Cliff Kingsbury, they will be under the microscope come week #1 in the preseason, because I believe NFL teams, they're going to blitz him early. Not typically what they do in the preseason, but they're going to blitz the young quarterback.
All right, finally, New Orleans wide receiver Michael Thomas did not report to training camp yesterday. He and the Saints are in contract negotiations but have not agreed to terms yet. So you surprised Thomas wasn't at camp?
No, I'm not surprised. The Saints only have a little bit of money, and they've had issues with players in the past. Wide receiver, they decided instead of extending
Michael Thomas?
No,
Brandon Cooks to trade him away.
Brandon Cooks, they traded him away. He was the best receiver, and he was a first-round pick. You would have think Sean Payton would have he was going to build on that because Drew was going to play. Drew, they weren't just up and giving Drew money. Drew had some issues as far as getting paid there. And Michael Thomas, as a second-rounder, he has outperformed that contract. There's no way that he should be there. I believe his asking price is about $18 to $20 million, and I believe that this might take a long time for them to come up with that type of cheese.
Listen, this is the most reasonable and rational holdout anyone could possibly have. This is a player who was not taken in the first round, has made in his career a total of $4 million, is scheduled to make $1 million this year, who is 3 years in the NFL, has gone 92 for 1,100, 104 for 1,250, 125 for 1,400, while scoring 23 touchdowns. He has been extraordinary. He has been available. He has been low maintenance. He's been an enormous part of the Saints' success the last 2 seasons, and he's never been paid accordingly. So you would be paying for not only past performance, but a player who has only gotten better each year, and you assume excellent future performance. He doesn't have a fit because he's not a first-round pick. Also keep in mind, no fifth-year option on his deal. So this is the last year of his contract. If he doesn't get a new deal now, they could potentially franchise tag him. So I support almost all players in getting their money, but this one also makes a ton of sense. It's not a Melvin Gordon situation where you're like, are you biting off a little more than you can chew here?
No.
He has been great, and he's never been paid. He's never been one of the top 75 highest paid receivers in the league. Even in the last couple of years, he's been arguably a top 5 receiver.
And we think he's going to get paid. This is probably going to work itself out. Assuming he does get paid and he does rejoin the team, do you think this is the Saints team that can finally break through this year and win the Super Bowl?
I mean, the Saints the last 2 years, they were good enough to win. They had the miracle in Minneapolis. We had the bad call last year. They're playing at home. Sean Payton, I believe, is still underrated as a coach. Drew Brees still haven't won an MVP, has won the Super Bowl, would like to be able to get another one as he approaches retirement. This is a good football team that defensively last couple years, they've gotten better. They are definitely a Super Bowl contender.
And they remember, they traded an extra first-round pick to move up in the draft to get a pass rusher. That's a win right now move. When they did that, people thought during the draft, I remember, oh, the only way you trade 2 first-round picks is to go get a quarterback. No, they want to win right now. They don't have – the reason Thomas is so important to your question is, yes, I think fully healthy Saints team is one of the 4 best teams in football, in my mind, without question. But they don't have an abundance of playmakers. They lost Mark Ingram, so they're going to be leaning on Alvin Kamara more. Kamara is an excellent dual-threat running back, and Michael Thomas, we've talked about, is an excellent wide receiver. But without him, all of a sudden, it's like, wait, Ted Ginn, and what is this, year 15 for Ted Ginn, it feels like? Traquan Smith, like, all of a sudden, the punch from that offense is removed. So, yes, they absolutely could win the Super Bowl this year if they get Michael Thomas in the fold. If they don't, teams will focus on stopping Kamara and dare the other guys to beat him. He's wildly important. Another reason the holdout makes sense.
And Michael Thomas appreciates his development there. He's got a great receiver coach. He's got a great head coach in Sean Payton, and that system fits him. They move him all around. They put him in the slot. They run all different types of combinations to be able to get him open. So he's not a system player, but that system fits him perfectly.
All right, let's move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers now. They extended head coach Mike Tomlin's contract 1 season, keeping him through 2021. The team looking for a little stability after a tough year in which they not only missed the playoffs for the first time since 2013, they lost both Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, 2 of the best offensive weapons in football. Tomlin entering his 13th season with Pittsburgh. He's reached the playoffs 8 times in that span. See, what's your reaction to the 1-year extension that Tomlin got?
I can understand the 1-year extension. When they went out and they signed Ben to an extension, Tomlin to an extension, we had the question was, man, this is Ben Roethlisberger's team. Well, the organization lets you know, this organization, it's still Mike Tomlin and Ben Roethlisberger. So the voice of Mike Tomlin should be just as loud and just as effective or more effective than it's been the last couple of years, because his message to me was damaged going to the players based on the behavior of some of the star players. Because if you're a star, you undermine the coach. Every time you do something, there's a distraction because the coach has warned us. Mike Tomlin lays it out, maps it out week after week, day after day, how guys should act, how to be a good teammate, how to be a good player in this league, how to have longevity in this league. And we have seen countless number of times the Pittsburgh Steelers, from a variety of different sources, that undermines the coach's authority. And now this offseason, they gave Ben the extension that he wanted, traded AB off to the Raiders, allowed L. Bell to leave in free agency there with the Jets. So now the leaders of this team are Ben and Mike Tomlin. And to me, this just gives Mike Tomlin, he can have that strong voice that he's had in that locker room because he's got several years guaranteed. And to players in the locker room, when the coach is in that lame duck status, guys start making professional decisions. And they start saying, is he doing what's best for my career, or is he doing what's best for his career? And they begin to question that.
And Jenna, before the show we talked, you were a little curious about why only a one-year extension. And I think the Steelers are trying to thread the needle here. They didn't have to give him an extension because he wouldn't have been a lame duck yet. He had 2 years left on his deal. So they give him the security of the extra year. It also lines up conveniently with the expiration of Ben Roethlisberger's contract. They now have the coach and the quarterback under contract for the next 3 years. But it's also, it's not a two, it doesn't add 2 or 3 years to his contract, because even though the Steelers have been more stable at coach than any team in sports history, Noel, Cowher, Tomlin, that covers what, 55 years of Steelers football?
3 Steeler coaches since 1969.
Right. So, I mean, they have been as consistent at that spot as any team we've ever seen. They also saw what just happened in Green Bay, which is Mike McCarthy, a guy who has almost an identical resume to Tomlin. Tomlin's been to one more Super Bowl, but they both won one. McCarthy, 13 years, 125 wins, 9 playoff appearances. Tomlin, 12 years, 125 wins, 8 playoff appearances. But they had back-to-back down years in Green Bay, and they decided to move on. Last year was a down year by the Pittsburgh Steelers standards. Even though they won, they had a winning record, right. They missed the playoffs for the first time in 5 years. I think Tomlin can survive a bad year this year. I don't think he can survive a couple of them. And so he now has the security to where they don't have to worry about a contract extension after next season. But this is a big year for him and for Ben to see if there's going to be a third act to Ben Roethlisberger's career on the back end, similar to the way there's been one for Brady and Breeze, and we think there will be one for Phillip Rivers.
Cece, how important is it for a veteran player, a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, to have at least some stability at head coach, especially when he went and he lost 2 guys on his offense? Would that have been something to you if things were going on with you and Randy? Would you have wanted Denny Green to still be there? Does that affect a veteran player in any way?
There is no doubt. I mean, the system, you're so familiar with it. The things that the coach has allowed you to do. So you don't have to learn a new system. You don't have to learn his way. I mean, I knew with Denny Green, even if I was running a little bit late to the meeting, I was always the last person in the meeting. And Denny would always check my seat before he would start. And it wasn't that I was running late. I would stay in the locker room to make sure the guys weren't late, because I know Denny, if he sees me in there, he'll start. Why would I want to start all this over again, all these new things that I had to learn? I remember my buddy Troy Vincent. He was there the first day Jimmy Johnson took over with the Dolphins. And he happened to be running on time, Troy called it. Jimmy Johnson shut the door on him. They started the meeting. Troy was outside and everything. And he's like, man, I got to learn this new Jimmy Johnson way. Now, they weren't going to cut him and everything, but there's a lot of little things that the coaches have in their system. And once you know those as a veteran player, trying to learn a new coach, trying to learn a new system to a proven winner, Mike Tomlin is a rare breed, 105. 12 seasons in the NFL, never had a losing season.
Unbelievable.
All right, we're going into our 100th season. 105, I would say, is pretty good. Mike Tomlin has been a good football coach, but the optics the last 2 years do not fit his brand. In your face, a disciplinarian, tough defense. That's what they need to get back to, and that's what I believe they're going to try to do.
Your last season in Minnesota, was that Denny's last year, or he coached 1 year after you?
No, that was it.
That was it. And and this is no disrespect to the coach who took over for Denny Green, but you were still under contract. You had, I think it was $6 million you could have made if you would have come back another year. And I wonder if Denny Green would have been there longer, if you would have said, okay, I can hold out one more season. Or if the change at the coaching position was one of the things that's like, you know what?
It would have changed everything.
Okay. So
Absolutely.
I didn't want to speak for you. And so it would have.
It's a big deal.
And so for Big Ben, we've heard a lot of conflict with Big Ben in this team. We haven't heard much of Big Ben and Tomlin.
Tomlin, right.
Now, I'm sure Tomlin gets annoyed a little bit at the radio stuff. And then coaches, you work together long enough. There are things people do that annoy you. But they seem to have a really good working relationship. I'm sure Ben is happy to know that his coach is under contract for as long as he's under contract.
You guys would love Mike Tomlin. You would love playing for him. But just over the last couple years, the personalities have gotten so strong that Mike Tomlin has taken a hit. He is a good football coach. He knows his X's and O's, and he's great with the guys on the one-on-one, treating them different. So Mike Tomlin, in the last couple of years, he's gotten he's a better football coach than the product that they put on the field.
All right, let's take a break. Coming up, could an Ezekiel Elliott holdout derail the Cowboys season before it even starts? That's still ahead on First Things First. Back here on First Things First, Pro Bowl linebacker Bart Scott joins the conversation. He's hard at work.
Baby blue dreaming. What up, man?
What it do? Don't worry.
Hey, listen.
That's lotion. That's all. That's all. I told you, black man and lotion in summer don't mix.
Hey,
That's
listen,
right, man. I'm not worried about how
You can come in and ruin the show, but don't ruin Jenna's vocabulary by teaching her all these little things that's going to get her
What
off
it
the
do, America?
Zip. No. Zip it.
Don't
Duck
do it?
mouth.
Okay.
You go, Jenna.
Listen, I want the
go. You
tutorial.
there? You zip it.
Let's talk. I need the tutorial. Let's talk about the Arizona Cardinals. Bart, first overall pick Kyler Murray starting his first training camp yesterday. Kyler and new coach Cliff Kingsbury will try and bring a new look, high-flying offense to the league. Murray was asked about this new offense and why he thinks it'll work in the NFL.
I don't see why everybody thinks it can't be successful. It's just like any other offense. It's an offense. We work at it, we practice it, and it's our job to execute it. If we don't, then it won't be successful. But if we do, like I said, I feel like it works at the college level. I don't see why it couldn't work at the pro level. So it's our job to make people believe in that.
All right, Bart, you trust that Kyler and Kingsbury will be successful in the NFL?
I think they'll be successful initially. I want to see how they adjust to the adjustment. We saw it with Lamar Jackson last year coming out and taking the league by storm before the Chargers came out and put the more athletic pieces out there. I'm excited because he's a little different than what Lamar Jackson is. You talk about in college, it's over 69% completion rate, only 7 interceptions. You know that he can make great decisions with the ball. And unlike RG3 and Lamar Jackson, he's not so skinny and thin that I worry about him taking hard contact. Even though he's only 205 pounds, that's pretty big. That's bigger than Darren Sproles, than somebody that's accustomed to taking hits. So I don't worry about his health. But I want to see how can he adjust to the adjustment. He's a guy that I think gets mislabeled at times. I understand they have trouble protecting the passer, but when you have the RPO type of system, that's a way to really cause pause between the defensive end and the pass rushers to buy yourself more time when you don't have a great offensive line.
So I don't think people worry about his thickness, if you will. I think they believe he is positioned to be able to handle the general punishment of the NFL. The worry is his height. And the worry is his height combined with an offense that has been very successful at the collegiate level, but we've never seen what Cliff Kingsbury is going to try to do at the pro level. So it's two different things that will be, as Cris likes to make fun of me for saying, one of one in NFL history. This offense coming to the league and working, and a quarterback this size coming to the league and working. Now, maybe in order for one to work, you need the other. And maybe in order for Kingsbury's offense to work, you need a quarterback like this, which is why they moved off of Josh Rosen after trading 3 picks to move into the higher part of the first round to go get him. The other part about Murray, though, that I do think is a bit of a misnomer and very different than Lamar and much more like Russell Wilson is this. In college, he would have been an elite player with 0 yards rushing. Lamar had good passing numbers, but he won the Heisman because he was such a dual threat. Russell Wilson at NC State and at Wisconsin made great plays with his legs, but was an elite passer. Kyler's just his passing numbers. He broke Baker's record of all-time college quarterback efficiency rating. He was a spectacular passer under Lincoln Riley. So I don't think he's going to have to run around a ton to be successful in the NFL. The question and the concern for me going into the process and still is, can a guy who's 5'9.5", play in the pocket in this league when we've never seen it happen, when we know that's what he's going to have to do to be successful?
Well, the one thing that he has that no other 5'9" guy has, he has the arm talent of a 6'4", Troy Aikman, 6'5" quarterback. He has that type of arm talent. The thing there's two concerns that I have. Number one, coming from Oklahoma, just like Baker Mayfield, and Baker he got lucky because he went to a team that had a decent offensive line in the Cleveland Browns. Best offensive line in college football last year, Oklahoma Sooners. So that 5'9" guy sat behind a massive offensive line, and they've been very good at the offensive line the last several years, the reason why their quarterbacks have played. The Arizona Cardinals, bruh, their offensive line is awful. It is awful. So I'm concerned that he is going to be running for his life because of the offensive line. He's going to have to. And I do remember, and I'm not trying to make this comparison, so just listen to me and hear me because I'm trying to work this thought out. Remember when they had the Wildcat, Bart?
Yeah.
And there were certain problems it presented to the defense.
We destroyed it.
Yeah, you destroyed it. And that's why I brought it up with you on the program, because the Wildcat couldn't present another option as far as throwing the football. And when they put all those people at the line of scrimmage, they didn't make them play. The air raid offense has not been great at pass protection. So who is helping Cliff Kingsbury change these multiple pass protections so you can protect that quarterback? And in that offense in college, it's predicated on the hash marks. And the hash marks are so much wider, you can out-athletic people in college. You can give a guy sideways the ball in space, and he can make something happen. You can't do that in the NFL because they're too quick, and the ball is in the middle of the field. So I need to see what are the answers to what people are going to do, because they getting ready to heat him up, man.
Right.
Like, they getting ready to blitz him in the pocket, and when they get those answers, I do believe they'll have a chance to be successful. But if they don't, my man Kingsbury going to be back with that nice smooth haircut back in college somewhere.
See, but here's the difference, and, while we were able to defeat the Wildcat, a lot of times it was ran through Ronnie Brown, and he was a guy that we knew wasn't a threat to throw the ball. So when a quarterback is efficient, he can run the ball. Now it's 11 on 11, because usually it's 11 on 10, because once the quarterback, hands the ball off, he becomes a spectator. I'm not concerned with him as far as being able to throw the ball and pass batted, because he was one of the best at that and not getting his ball batted. He has an over-top delivery. He doesn't have a sidearm delivery like Lamar Jackson, not like even some of the taller quarterbacks that have come in. And he's always been that height. And understanding and having to defend Michael Vick and being one of the teams that had some of the best success against Michael Vick, we understand that shorter quarterbacks throw through windows. But the same windows he throws through is the same windows that he runs through. So what defenses are going to try to do is stir the pocket and distort the view, so he can't have clear views to see where that guy is open to throw through that window. So he's going to be on the move a lot. So early on, it's going to be important that they get him on the move so they can dictate where the ball is going and who's coming into his vision. But he's still a threat. He's a guy that has that elite speed that he can change your angle. And I think guys in space are going to realize that he's a lot faster, a lot more difficult, and a lot more elusive to get. He's more quick than Russell Wilson, more explosive, but he still gives you that short target where, as a defender, you hit him, and if you hit him a lot of times because he's shorter, you knock him back opposed to knocking him over because he has a great center of gravity and great balance. A lot of times when we see guys come and think they're going to blow Darren Sproles up because he's so small, you end up propelling him back. He stays on his feet. You falls down. And for people thinking that he's going to fail, I don't think. He's Lamar Jackson, but he can throw. Yeah. So if Lamar Jackson was a success, which he was last year, getting his team into the playoffs, he's better than Baker. He's going to continue to grow. He's not a better thrower than Baker. He's a better athlete than Baker is. Baker got a better supporting cast. I think he can be successful. My thing is the principles to this offense aren't sound. And then when you don't have sound principles in the NFL, they exploit you. And you mentioned he can. If Lamar could be successful, he can. Lamar, I believe, would have had no shot doing what he did last year behind that Cardinals offensive line. He had a good offensive line, a great coach, a very good running game, and an excellent defense. The Cardinals were worst at everything last year. Yeah. They were the worst scoring offense, the worst points offense. They were a bottom 6 scoring defense. They were the 4th worst plus-minus team. They were just, they got Larry, they got David Johnson, maybe they got Chandler Jones, Patrick Peterson. Well, they need David Johnson to be the guy he was a couple years ago, not the last 2 years. So there's a lot working against
Kyler his first season, which is why it'll be very interesting.
Perfect system for a bad offensive line.
Okay.
Just as Deshaun Watson.
NFL worst 3-13 last year, the Cardinals?
Yes. That's how they got him.
Any change is a good change. Bart, stick around. Coming up, are Aaron Rodgers and the Packers underdogs this year? That's next on First Things First. Back here with Bart Scott. Excitement is building for the start of the season in Green Bay. Bart, Aaron Rodgers, healthy and motivated. Packers, they've got a new head coach in Matt LaFleur. And after 2 days of training camp, there is seemingly no tension between the two. Aaron says, why should there be? Their relationship is growing, and the two are friends. However, he says adjusting to a new coach will take time.
A lot of times when you have a coaching change, you have to go through the struggles of, learning and starting over almost. But I think what Brian has done with our roster and the guys that we have coming back, I think, we have a chance to compete. And again, we're in a good spot, too, because nobody's talking about us. Some of the most dangerous teams, I thought, from our years are when everybody's talking about every other team out there except for us, and we can kind of come at our own pace and surprise some people in the beginning.
All right, Bart, if this team is going to succeed, what's going to be the biggest key for Aaron Rodgers and the Packers?
Well, I think less of Aaron Rodgers is going to be the key. This is a team that when you look from the outside in, is a soft team in a tough division, led by the Chicago Bears, who can run the ball, they can stop you on run, and they're physical, nasty, and you think about the elements. Aaron Rodgers hasn't been healthy in the last couple of years. It's because they're leaning and putting too much pressure on him. Now, when we see some of the, even though he's not an older quarterback, he's 34 years old, you would think he has 6 more good years in him. But if they're going to prolong that, they're going to have to keep him on the football field. And to do that, they're going to have to increase the time of possession and quit asking him to be special. We think about all the miracle plays that he's made over the years. That's hard to sustain. I think they need to ground and pound the ball, and I think they need to take a little bit from what they did with Drew Brees. Run the football, lean on a heavy defense, and only ask Aaron Rodgers to be special in spurts. Take the game down. Lead. I think they were 20th in the league in time of possession. If you can change that and maybe jump up to 10, I think it gives you more opportunities to put him on the short field. They got tougher up the middle defensively. They drafted Rashawn Gary. They drafted outside corners. They spent money in free agency for the first time, a lot of money on the defensive side of the ball. And I think if, you put it to where Aaron Rodgers just has to be better than the other quarterback 2 or 3 possessions, you go ahead with a defense that's tough, then I think that's a recipe for success. We've seen it happen across the league with a lot of the older quarterbacks.
Yeah, there's not a lot of soft players in the NFL, but there are soft systems.
Yeah.
And if you don't run the ball, if you don't play an attack defense, and if people will categorize you as a soft football team.
Yeah.
You're easier to play against. And those types of teams, too, you're not that sore after the game. They used to say there's certain type of coaches, man, you're sore Wednesday or Thursday when you play against their team. Yeah. Baltimore for years, Pittsburgh for years, knockdown, drag-outs. And you're like, I'm trying to get ready, but I'm still feeling the pain of last week's game. Green Bay Packers have not been that way. Haven't been in the top 10 in points, have not been in the top 10 in yards in the last 10 years defensively. So that's a soft football team, even though no coach will say that I preached a soft mentality.
Right.
But your style, your players, they will know that. After games, the opposition will know that. So you hit it right on the head. From the front office standpoint, they decided when they got off of McCarthy as a head coach, we're going to be more physical. Yeah. We're going to try to be more demanding of our players. They went from a 43 defense to a 34, and typically that 34 defense, you got to play it with big people, and you have to be physical to be able to play it effectively. They spent a lot of draft capital on their secondary the last few years. They should be really good. And Aaron Jones, the running back, they have to get him involved because they have not supported Aaron Rodgers with a consistent running game since he's been the starter there in Green Bay. If they want things to change, if Aaron wants to get people's attention, this organization want to get people the attention on the national stage, that physical style will take over the first month of the season. And listen, they better have it geared up because Chicago and Minnesota, big, physical, rugged teams, you have to be able to match that in your division, and they finally now have the right person.
And you mentioned Chicago and Minnesota in their division. It's also the first 2 weeks of the season and first 5 weeks of the season. The defenses they face, Chicago, Minnesota, Denver, Philadelphia, Dallas. If you ask Aaron Rodgers to drop back 40 times a game in those first 5 weeks of the year, you know what this year will likely have in common with last year and the year before? Aaron Rodgers gets dinged or worse early, and it derails the season. Now, the Packers did something I thought a little curious a couple days ago, which is they've been preaching they're going to be about defense. They've invested in the defense. They brought in Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith, linebacking core. They then cut Mike Daniels in a contract dispute. That doesn't make your team better for this coming season.
Well, I'm going to tell you, he's not a good fit for the system. He's not a nose tackle that can play on the nose over the center in a 34. He's more of a 4-3 defensive. And the kind of money you're paying him, you can get somebody to do that for a lot less. And he's not a 34 defensive end. Too short. Arms aren't long enough, so he's not the prototype to fit there.
So even though you see a lot of teams are interested,
speaking a little defense.
Even though, because when I saw Mike Daniels got cut,
I couldn't have said it better myself, CC.
Because I think a lot of people had the reaction I had. That's a good player. You do that $8 million for a player of his caliber. You look at a lot of good teams interested in him. You're saying because of the system change wasn't a fit there.
Yeah, need a fat guy to hold the jump throughs. They brought in Rashawn Gary to play that Geno Atkins, Muhammad Wilkerson type of guy that's 6'5", that's long, that can shoot the gaps because he's going to be in between the guard and the tackle.
So I wanted to get back to something that you guys were struck by a little earlier when Aaron Rodgers mentioned that he and Matt LaFleur are friends now, and so everything should be okay. You laughed at that. Why?
I mean, because he's telling you who's the boss. Like, we're friends, and LaFleur's going to have to earn his respect. Whenever you go into a quarterback that's already great, you have to show them that you have the answers to the test. And I'm sure Aaron's going to try and press him to see what his philosophy is in certain situations. So you have to go in and earn his respect.
Bart, you friends with any of your coaches, former coaches?
You know what? I was.
Okay, which one?
Friends with Rex, probably.
Me and Dennis Thurman fell over the table at my party.
Man, Dennis Thurman is cool. Dennis Thurman ain't no regular dude. Dennis Thurman cool with a bunch of people.
DT.
Okay, now that ain't no, I don't give you that one.
Okay, well, me and Rex were cool.
You and Rex is on the same level. Rex a young dude,
and we came up together
in the league, coming into the league.
See, but this is a young coach that's trying to find his way, and he knows the best way to help his resume is to have success with Aaron Rodgers, because if he can't have success with Aaron Rodgers, how can you go anywhere in this league and say you're a great offensive coach if you can't devise a plan to utilize those type of talents that Aaron Rodgers has? Now, I think when you talk about the philosophy of the schemes, how you try and make them tough, they're going to have to put Aaron Jones at the home position. All that finesse type of stuff that you're talking about, those RPOs type of things, that's soft philosophy, because you're not getting double teams getting up to the second level.
Right.
He's going to have to devise some of the same plays that he had when he was down in Tennessee, because that was down in your face. That make you respect. If you got to earn the respect of Minnesota, you got to earn the respect of Chicago. You do that by punching them in the mouth.
All right, Bart. We'll see you a bit later on in the show.
DT, you my boy, DT.
How many cognacs was it when you guys fell over?
I
think it was 26 down Julio's.
Will Carson Wentz live up
Each
to
or split?
his big payday next on First Things
The bill was $55 grand.
What?
D. Thurman is a grown man.
What party was this?
55
My birthday party.
grand?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I got the bill. I didn't like it.
That's half week for you.
I didn't like it.
Stop saying that. No, unclear. Welcome back. We'll get to Carson Wentz in just a second, but first, Anthony Rendon backhands the grounder down the third baseline, throws out Raimel Tapia while falling into foul territory.
Now, that was a great throw right there. That was on the line. He had a guy who was running. We got one of these highlights yesterday, man. Dude was running like the milkman. It took forever to get over there.
Rendon's made a few of these highlights for us.
Little high school basketball, Huntington Prep junior guard Jim McGatwick doing the under both leg dunk during a game.
Now, this is nasty right here. This is one of the better in-game dunks I've ever seen. Puts it in his left hand before he goes up. Oh!
And he knew what he was doing there. This kid's got a whole bunch of big-time highlights of these types of dunks. But most of those are in warm-ups. This in a live game, that's wild.
Here we go, NFL training camp underway. Cardinals air raid offense. Kyler Murray to Larry Fitzgerald for the one-handed catch while falling out of bounds.
See, did Fitzy get both feet in there?
Nope. He was out. The referee right there said so. I don't even have to look at the referee. Look at the stripes,
well, the referee
man.
Look at I think he did get him.
Man, stop tripping, man.
This
is what I do, man. When you gonna learn that? This is what I do. There's people that build buildings, people that paint paintings. This is what I do.
Watch it one more time.
This is my whole show. No, that left foot hit on the chalk, man. Stop playing with me.
Agree to disagree.
Don't trip. On to the Cleveland Browns.
Now, that was good, Jenna.
Odell, I'm learning just
No.
vocabulary osmosis from Nick. Odell Beckham Jr. making a beautiful catch on the sideline.
Now, he got both feet and a knee in bounds and then showed the ball to everybody. He had a few of these spectacular catches yesterday.
Yeah, great throw by Baker, keeping it away from the defender. One thing, watch with the Browns receiving core and their quarterback. They're going against a good defense. The reps that they get should really help this young football team get a lot of seasons. So watch them how they practice in the competition. They should be working with each other to build something special there in Cleveland.
All right, moving on to Carson Wentz now. He kicked off his 4th training camp this year. Couldn't be happier about it. Eagles gave him a big money extension this offseason, then traded away his backup, Nick Foles, to leave no question about who the Eagles quarterback is. Carson said he knows it will not be easy getting the Eagles back to the playoffs for a 3rd straight season, but he's looking forward to the journey.
I've never been, complacent with one win, one championship, one of those, any of that. Obviously, for me, there's a bit of the personal side. I wasn't on that field back in the Super Bowl, so there's that element too. But I'll never be the type that's going to settle. I'm always striving for more, always trying to push myself to be the best. And if I didn't have that mentality, I probably wouldn't even be here today. We got to come out here and come together as a team and really build this team and not a bunch of individuals. And I think we have the ability to do something really special with this group, but it's going to take a lot of hard work.
Cris, what do you think is motivating Carson Wentz heading into this season?
I think like any great player, the personal expectations. Forget what anyone else is saying. People with the most talent typically have the highest goals or the highest standard. I'm glad that he communicated that watching that Super Bowl win, man, that was gut-wrenching for him. Because I had said that. I said, this is not a good feeling. He's trying to cheer Nick Foles on and everything, but that's not his football team. He might have been the captain of the team. You might go out there for the coin toss. But when you're not playing, you're not actually a part of it. You're just riding in the car. He might as well have been in the trunk. Handcuffed. Nick Foles, that was his show. Nick Foles got all the credit. So the first playoff game that he plays in, that ain't the Philadelphia Eagles 3 years in a row. No, it'd be Carson Wentz's first playoff game. This is a huge season for him. They believe in him. I believe he should be one of the favorites to be the MVP. The supporting cast, them signing Sproles a couple days ago, it gives them their running backs, I believe, are the best running back core that they've had. They should be able to run the ball. Jordan Howard should be, he should surprise a lot of people. If he rushes for 1,000 yards, if they have a 1,000-yard rusher, then that gives that wide receiving core, which I believe is rock solid. They got a very good tight end. They got 3 or 4 wide receivers. They got Sproles coming out of the backfield. I believe none of them more important than Deshaun Jackson, what he brings. Last year in the NFL, no one averaged 18 yards a catch but Deshaun Jackson. He's one of the special deep threats that we've had. Where did Carson Wentz and their passing game, where did it fall off? From 17 to 18, it's on those deep balls. And no one in the NFL has been more effective than Deshaun Watson than on 60-yard touchdowns. Deshaun Jackson, the most in NFL history. I expect big things. They should have Super Bowl aspirations in Philadelphia this year.
And listen, for Carson, he's gotten everything a football player can ask for, aside from a taste of the playoffs and individual playoff success. That draft class he was in, that top 5 is loaded. Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, Joey Bosa, Ezekiel Elliott, Jalen Ramsey. That's unbelievable. Only one of them's gotten paid, by the way. Carson.
Yes.
Dak's in that draft class, well, way lower. He's waiting to get paid. I don't even remember who won the MVP 2 years ago because we talk about that as the MVP Carson Wentz won, even though he didn't actually win it. Who won the 20? Was it Brady? I'm not sure, but I know Wentz was going to win it. We say it 1,000 times. So he's got the money. He's got a great supporting cast. I think a good head coach and an extraordinary front office with a great organization. You got everything in front of you. And now he has to stay healthy, which has been the bugaboo for him throughout. And we have to see him in the playoffs. We haven't had Coach Mangini on this training camp season, but I do listen to Coach, even though he thinks I don't. And for guys in the league, there's the question of, okay, you are here. What will you be once the games are single elimination? I think Carson Wentz can be great in those spots, but that's projection. That's prognostication because we've never seen him in those spots. The guy taking a spot ahead of him, Jared Goff, he's been to a Super Bowl already. The Rams are still waiting to pay him and said, we're going to watch him another year. Carson's been hurt 2 of the 3 years he's played, hasn't yet played in a playoff game. He got his money. He's got a great supporting cast. I agree with Cris. I think Jordan Howard's the best running back he's had. J.J. was a nice enough player. I think Jordan Howard's an excellent player. I think Chicago's going to regret letting him walk out the door. And Deshaun Jackson is going to be able to run past people, evidently, until he stops choosing to play football.
Yeah, he's going to be like Darrell Green.
Yes.
When he gets 40, he still run a 4.3.
Absolutely right. And so you are set up. We know how good the offensive line is. They moved up in the first round to take a potentially elite tackle to be a backup offensive lineman.
Yes.
Behind their Hall of Fame left tackle. Lane Johnson might be the best right tackle in football. You still have Kelsey. Like, you got all these pieces around you. So, yeah, the question for Carson Wentz is, can you take advantage of it? And can you be there all 16 games?
Is Carson Wentz the only question on this team? You have depth at every position. You have a great backfield. You have a coach who's proven himself, taking you to the Super Bowl. And you have a healthy quarterback. What's keeping you from being one of the, the most hyped team or the team that's probably the most likely to go to the Super Bowl already?
Jenna, there's more question marks around the other parts of the roster than there are with Carson Wentz, but just because he's hurt and because he's the quarterback and because Nick Foles won that Super Bowl, he's going to be on the marquee. But they got tremendous questions as far as their linebacking core.
Yeah.
They still got question marks as far as their secondary. The reason why they won that Super Bowl is their secondary played extraordinary throughout the season. They have not gotten that type of play. So in Philadelphia, are there no questions? Yeah, there are questions. But the red-hot topic is their quarterback, and can he stay healthy? And I haven't heard someone on national TV that's a bigger fan of Carson Wentz than myself. He's got all the tools. And yes, there are players who get hurt in this collision sport, and there's some who get hurt more than others. But I'm going to start off with the talent level he has. I believe he gets them to a Super Bowl. They're going to win a Super Bowl with Carson Wentz being their quarterback. That's what the front office, that's why they game. That's why he's the first one in that group to be able to get that contract extension.
And, Jenna, I think they are one of the teams that people around the league look at and say, oh, they are a top 4 team in this league. They are a team that can go win a Super Bowl. Sometimes because I'm not quite as high on them as other people, and you hear my takes before the show, during the show, after the show, so maybe sometimes my takes pollute your general thought on what the national conversation is. The Eagles are one of the most hyped, and one of the most hyped teams in the league. Like, the Patriots are just grandfathered in because they've earned it.
No, but the only team we've really talked about this offseason as far as hype goes are the Cleveland Browns. And yet here's a team that is far more proven than just what the Browns have on paper. They've got the pieces that we've actually seen do it.
And do it on a more extended period of time for Wentz than Baker. For Baker, we've seen 9 games. For Wentz, we did see nearly a full season his second year in the league.
All right, let's take a break. Coming up, will Kyler Murray live up to the hype? Speaking of hype, that's next on First Things First. Back here, First Things First, we are going viral. All right, check this out. CCU wanted it. Ben Simmons shooting jumpers against actual NBA players. This is Austin Rivers and Devin Booker.
Yeah, Austin Rivers out there, Devin Booker out there, as Jenna mentioned.
Okay,
Ben Simmons pulling up.
Oh, come on.
Oh, okay, so here's the thing. See, you're going to be negative on this until we see him do it in the game, and I understand that. But when you watch a highlight like this, and I'm a Ben Simmons fan, it frustrates me because he clearly has some ability to shoot the basketball. And his refusal to do any of that during an NBA game is vexing because, listen, it's not the prettiest shot in the world, but it exists. Like, he clearly has the capability. We know he can do that. But to shoot jumpers, to pull up, and he just won't do it in the game. He's doing it in...
Because he don't have no confidence, Nick.
Right.
When he plays in these rec games, he shouldn't be able to dunk the basketball. He should never allow himself to dunk the basketball. Remove the dunk from his game.
Yeah.
That's all I was trained by basketball players. My brother trained me. He introduced me to people like Isaiah Thomas, Magic Johnson. That's the reason why. I have seen all these routines. I saw Ray Allen when he came to Miami with that shooting routine that he had. Like, I'm not just making this stuff because I don't have nothing better to do. This is all I have seen throughout my life. When I was a kid, the only reason why I didn't try to go to the NBA because I couldn't shoot the ball as good. So I know that. Like, forget it.
Miss me with that.
No, Jenna, I beg you to stop.
Miss me with that, sorry.
I just
missed
beg.
that.
The show would be better if you missed the show with
Gotcha.
me.
Okay. I just thought maybe
If
at
you
this point,
told that to your girlfriends
2 hours in, I
and
would have gotten
everything,
it. So-
they'll get rid of you.
It's
as a
2
friend.
hours in, 2 years in, you ain't got it.
All right.
You thought
Stories
today
to
was
start
going to be
your
the day the
morning.
light bulb went off?
Yes. Every day I think that's going to be the day, Nick.
No.
Big news out of Dallas. Ezekiel Elliott did not board the team plane to training camp yesterday. He does, however, have until this morning to report before officially becoming a holdout. Nick, how do you expect this to play out?
Man, I think Zeke's going to show up. I think I know it's in the team's best interest for him to show up. I don't know if it's in his best interest to show up, but is he willing to play this game of chicken with the Dallas Cowboys in this critical season? And is he willing, when Dak is yet to be paid, and Dak's showing up, obviously. Dak's only got 1 year left on his deal, and Dak's never made real money. Is he willing to not show up when Dak is? Those are the questions, and I guess we'll get the answer in a few hours.
You know, when you're in the NFL locker room, Nick, you know whose problem that is?
Dak's problem.
Oh, that's Dak's problem. That ain't my problem. We could be tight as can be. That could be my boy. But every man is in business for himself. Dallas Cowboys are in business for themselves. They getting ready to make Dak rich. They're going to make Amari Cooper rich. And Zeke, if he's smart, he's the best player on the team. He would stick to his guns. He should get his contract. I wouldn't be concerned about Dak and them. That ain't my fault he got drafted in the 3rd round. It ain't my fault Amari got traded. It ain't my fault. I need my money, and that's what Zeke is going to tell him.
All right, moving on to the Saints now. New Orleans wide receiver Michael Thomas. He also did not report to training camp yesterday. He and the Saints are in contract negotiations but have not agreed to terms yet. CC, are you surprised that Thomas wasn't at camp?
No, not surprised at all. They had a hard time getting Drew Brees signed, and you talking about the type of money. Mike might want $100 million for 5.
Yeah.
Okay? That's a lot of money for a wide receiver. He has earned it. It's his turn. He was not a high draft pick. He's exceeded the expectations. He's exceeded the expectation, and I've been watching him play since high school. Played high school in California, went to military school, then went to Ohio State. I never thought that he would be as good a wide receiver as he is. I was totally wrong. I thought he'd be a good wide receiver, have a good 8 to 10 year career. But, man, he is a star in the NFL, Nick.
This is the most reasonable and rational holdout imaginable. He's a player who's never made any money. He's a 2nd-round pick, scheduled to make $1 million this year.
How much has he made?
He's made, in 3 years, a total of $4 million. And by NFL standards, I should say,
Right.
not any significant money. Since coming into the league, not only has he gotten better every year, but he started off good enough that over the last 3 years, he's top 6 in catches, touchdowns, and yards. This is the type of guy who gets paid in this league, and if he has forced their hand, he has forced their hand.
And even though he's not from New Orleans, Sean Payton and them won a hometown discount because that system
has helped him out.
All right, moving on to the Cleveland Browns. They opened up camp yesterday, and Odell loved every second of it. Shined, making some spectacular signature catches. Beckham said, quote, "I feel like I belong." See, what do you think? Was this sort of a precursor of what's to come for Odell?
People always, they make up some stuff, and they say, you know, a tight end is a quarterback's best friend. You know what a tight end's best friend is? When a guy is covered, and I can throw him the ball, and he can still make a catch. Because that's what you saw a lot yesterday. They're going to get great coverage, great practice reps. But, man, this is good for OBJ to be back out there, not trying to do interviews, play football. What he's great at, what he got his name for doing, it's exciting. They are very, very talented. This is not hype. I know we've talked about them a lot. They've lost a lot of games over the last 20 years. But this is the most talented Cleveland team that they've had there in 15 years.
Man, I was on Twitter yesterday, and it felt like every 15 minutes there was a different Odell highlight on my Twitter feed, and then a few minutes later, there's a different clip out of Giants camp of Daniel Jones knocking a cooler over with a pass. Then Sterling Shepard breaks his thumb, unfortunately. Then Odell does this. I'm like, oh, these poor Giant fans can't win for losing. Odell and the Browns are going to be excellent. We've said we both like Baker as a kind of dark horse MVP pick. I think Odell's going to be first-team All-Pro receiver for the first time in his career. So, I think this is going to be a great year for Odell and the Browns.
All right, let's finish up with the Cardinals' first overall pick.
Heard, eat that.
Kyler Murray started his first training camp yesterday. Kyler and new coach Cliff Kingsbury will try and bring a new-look, high-flying offense to the league. Murray was asked about this new offense and why he thinks it'll work in the NFL.
I don't see why everybody thinks it can't be successful. It's just like any other offense. It's an offense. We work at it, we practice it, and it's our job to execute it. If we don't, then it won't be successful. But if we do, like I said, I mean, I feel like, it works at the college level. I don't see why it couldn't work at the pro level. So it's our job to make people believe in that.
CC, do you trust that Kyler Murray and the Cardinals offense will be successful in the NFL?
Well, let me address something first as far as the reason why that system doesn't work in the pros. All right? The reason why it's so successful in college. But it wasn't so successful that Cliff Kingsbury didn't get fired.
Correct.
Okay, so it doesn't just dominate college football. It puts up big numbers. But because of the hash marks and because of the lack of quality defensive backs in college football, you can spread the field, put 4 and 5 receivers on the field, throw the ball sideways. But their lack of pass protection, their lack of competent reads down the field, if you take away the number one read in this system, where does the ball go? Because typically the coach dictates where he wants the quarterback to throw the ball. That's why we were worried about Baker Mayfield last year. Would he be able to read out? Now, he was able to transfer over, understand NFL concepts, and use it to his advantage. That's the reason why this system, I believe the system can work, but, man, you must run the football. You must have a physical presence to be able to take the pressure off the quarterback, because we talked earlier with Bart Scott. I believe they're going to blitz him a lot. And the reason why you blitz him a lot, so you get people in his face so he can't step and throw. If you think being short doesn't hurt the job, like you don't know NFL quarterbacks. The offensive line is averaging 6'3", all right? The center might be between 6'1" and 6'3". Them guards are going to be 6'2" to 6'4", and them tackles are going to be 6'4" to 6'7". Now, I know you're going to be trying to throw in windows beside them, but every once in a while you have to throw over top of them to be able to get the ball. Now, he has a beautiful throwing motion, but some of these things are going to have to be answered. Will they put a competent running game? Can they be physical? Will they have enough different pass protections to protect that quarterback? And when the ball's in the middle of the field, which it is in the NFL games compared to college, you can't out-leverage guys to the outside. So I don't think it's going to work the way that it worked in college, because I think the quarterback's going to get hit too much. That offensive line, worst in pro football last year. Kyler is coming from Oklahoma that had the best offensive line, pro football focus in college football.
And won the award for it. There's I forget the name of the award, but there's an award for the best 5-man offensive line in college football. Yeah, it's called
We're Good.
Okay, sure. That's the official, the We're Good Offensive Line Award. And that is such an important point, because when people talk about Kyler's height, in a defense, they're like, well, he didn't have hardly any balls batted down in college. Man, who bats down balls? Defensive linemen. You know when it's hard to bat down balls? When an offensive lineman has knocked you 3 yards back and you're falling backwards. You know when it's easier? When you are winning that battle and you are closer to the quarterback. So yes, Kyler does have a good delivery. I'll trust you on that. It's something my eye can't quite see, but I believe you.
Straight over the top. Prototype.
But if the line of scrimmage is here, if your offensive line's winning the battle, now the defensive linemen are 6.5 yards away from you. If they're winning the battle, now they're 4 yards away from you or closer. So even if you're in the gun. So that is going to be different. That is my biggest concern for Kyler, aside from the height, and we've never seen someone succeed in the NFL at that position, at that height, is this will be the worst offensive line he's ever had in his football playing life. So we don't know how he's going to react to that. Also, this is going to be, in comparison to his opposition, the least talented team he's been on in his football playing life. Oklahoma wasn't playing a bunch of games where the opposition had more talent than them. They may have only played 2 or 3 all year where they had as much. Arizona last year was dead last in points scored, dead last in yards. They were bottom 6 in the NFL defensively. They were the 4th worst team in the plus-minus. So a great quarterback would be in a tough spot. A great veteran quarterback with Arizona. That's a new, young, small, new system, new head coach. It just concerns me. You said this during the break, David Johnson got paid early and an enormous amount of money. His second year in this league, he was great. And that Cardinals team was really good that year. He had 2,000 yards from scrimmage, 20 touchdowns. The next year, he broke his wrist, missed the whole season. And last year, he was mediocre at best. We can put that on the offensive line, but it's mostly the same offensive line is going to be run behind this year. He's going to have to be back to the guy he was in 2016 for Kyler to have a chance at surviving
A
this
couple
year.
guys from a throwing motion, if you want to look at him, look last year at Baker Mayfield. They throw very, very similar. Also look at Russell Wilson. All these guys are underside. All of them have a very good throwing motion where the arm comes over the top. That does not make them shorter. Guys who throw, even if you're 6'5", if you throw sidearm, it's like you're 6'2" in the pocket. So I expect him to have success throwing the ball. He has an unbelievable cannon of an arm. Touch throws, but don't worry about the height thing as far as passes being batted. Last year at Oklahoma, only 5 passes batted. Daniel Jones, on the other hand, at Duke, 7 inches taller, had 7 more passes batted in college than Kyler did last year. 5 compared to 12, 7 inches height. He had 7 more batted down.
Good luck, Giants. Coming up, what does Mike Tomlin's new deal tell us about the Steelers' future? That's next on First Things First. Back here, First Things First with Bart Scott. The Steelers extended head coach Mike Tomlin's contract 1 season, keeping him through 2021. The team looking for a little stability after a tough year in which they not only missed the playoffs for the first time since 2013, they lost both Antonio Brown and Lev Bell, two of the best offensive weapons in football. Tomlin entering his 13th season with the Steelers. He's reached the playoffs 8 times in that span. Bart, what's your reaction to Tomlin getting 1 extra year?
Well, I think he's still on the hot seat. Organizations have this thing that they do with coaches where they don't want them to be lame duck coaches. It shows a lack of stability with the team, and you want them to have power. So you give them a 1-year extension. So if you fire them the following year, that they'll be able to have income as they search for their new job. That's why you see when guys get fired, they go straight to television because we call it double dipping. So, I mean, I wouldn't look too much into them giving them an extension. It would have been a multiple-year extension if they really believed. I think this is a very important year for him because it was a lack of institutional control last year. When you hear all the things that come, out of that organization, whether it was Le'Veon Bell, whether it was Antonio Brown, it seemed like it was a lack of structure. I think they got rid of those guys and said, listen, we believe in you, Mike, but this is a year where you have to pull everything back together and show that you're an unquestioned leader.
Well, and it should be noted, he had 2 years on his deal, so now he has 3 years guaranteed on his deal.
Okay.
So he wasn't quite in the lame duck year, but it also wasn't a multi-year extension. So it was, to me, they were kind of trying to thread the needle on, we want to extend him so his length of contract at least goes as long as Ben Roethlisberger's does, but not tie us to him for multiple years in the future. Now,
Right.
the Steelers, Jenna said it earlier, have had 3 coaches in the last 50 years. It went Chuck Noll to Bill Cowher to Mike Tomlin. It also should be noted this. Mike Tomlin has an unimpeachable resume of success. He has never had a losing season. They have made the playoffs 8 times in 12 years. If we are talking about the best coaches in the NFL, Belichick, Reed, Sean Payton, John Harbaugh, Pete Carroll, Mike Tomlin are your top 6. You can pick the order. That's not the order I would have it in, by the way. But those are your 6 guys that you know are great head coaches. Now, last year was a down year. Last year was a year, not only down year because they missed the playoffs, but because it did seem like he had kind of lost the tether on the team to a degree. The year before that, they went 13-3. They lost a terrible playoff game to the Jags, which seemed to almost be a sign of things to come for the following season. But it's not that they've had consecutive bad seasons. They had an awful ending to their season 2 years ago and then a down year by their standards. But if Mike Tomlin were to get fired, if he didn't want to go into TV, he'd be out of work about 5 minutes.
Right.
He would instantly get another job. We saw a different Super Bowl winning head coach, Mike McCarthy, get fired this offseason. He still doesn't have a job. Now, maybe he could have, maybe he turned one down, or maybe the league wasn't as high on him as I believe they would be on Tomlin. But, of course, it's a big year because every year in Pittsburgh, where Big Ben is still your quarterback, you have legitimate, not only playoff, but Super Bowl aspirations. Now you have to do it with the least talented team that you've had offensively in the last 5 seasons.
Why is he so good, CC? How has a guy like that been able to survive what a lot of people would call dysfunction within that Pittsburgh franchise for the last couple of years and be successful at doing it?
Mike Tomlin is a great motivator. He's a great communicator. Young guys buy into him. Young people want to follow him. He's dynamic. I mean, he's motivational. His speeches, man, are second to none. Like, when he speaks to a team of grown men, like, he has the ability to be able to get their attention. And when he was a defensive back coach, he was one of the great teachers that we had. When you come to work, You have a guy, you're a young player, you're trying to learn this game. You think you know something. You get someone like Mike Tomlin, they start showing you how the league works. They start teaching you about offenses. You're like, wow, I feel like I got a chance to be able to earn a living. And he's become a great leader. The guys love him. They love playing for him. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, they trust him. That's one of the great stats in all of football. 60 years or so, Pittsburgh Steelers, they got 3 coaches. It's one of the great stats that you'll ever see. So you guys might not remember this. Bart might remember it vaguely. But the last coach they had, man, they won his head. He won it every year, Bill Cowher. Yeah. Every year he was getting ready to get fired.
To win a Super Bowl.
And Mike Tomlin's already won one. Yeah. And the organization was super patient with Bill Cowher. He's one of my favorite coaches. Does a great job on television, everything. But let's not forget, this is not a normal organization. If the Pittsburgh Steelers gave me a 3-year contract, you know what I'd be saying? That's a long term. That's long term. Short term is 1 or 2 years. Yeah. Long term in the business now is 3 or 4. He's got a long term contract, and it matches up with my star quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger. So they're letting them know, because the Pittsburgh Steelers aren't into paying people off and just going home. Yeah. All right? So to me, this allows Mike to be able to regain his voice, Bart, in that locker room. That becomes very important.
Well, they got to get back to Steeler football. I mean, they were last in the league in rushing the ball. They've been airing it out because of how good Ben Roethlisberger is, and as the league is changing. But it's going to be a lot on those players. You know, you think about James Conner, you think about Juju. They're going to have to step up, and they're going to see, you know, if he can coach now, because now you got to coach. Sometimes you can lean on your star players just to be great. Antonio Brown, making things happen. You know, Le'Veon Bell making things happen. You think about some of those end of the game plays that they made to win games when they were just better than the other person. You know, Antonio Brown making one-arm catches into double coverage. Now he's going to have to coach. This team is going to have to win, not just lean on individuals. And they're trying to get back to their way. Their secondary's been horrible. They finally decided to replace Shazier with bringing in Devin Bush. For that defense to work, they have to have an impact type of middle linebacker. You think about Ferrier, you think about Larry Foote, you think about, you know, some of the great middle linebackers that they've had. You know, and they're trying to get back to their identity and understanding that it flows through the coach first. But a lot of people will argue that Mike Tomlin won a Super Bowl with Bill Cowher's players. You know, and Bill Cowher laid a lot of the groundwork for that. He's had success, but now that division is catching up with them as they've ushered out old quarterbacks. You know, you look about the new dynamic quarterbacks that's coming in, and Baker Mayfield's going to have to be dealt with. Lamar Jackson, that Ravens defense, that's a tough division to play in, and now he's going to have to do it and coach those guys up.
But so and that was a criticism of Tomlin. Not a criticism, but kind of an asterisk. Yeah, listen, they won a Super Bowl early. They went back to a Super Bowl 2 years later. It was Cowher's system, Cowher's players. So let's just look at recent history. All the Cowher guys except for Big Ben gone. Since 2015, only 2 teams in the NFL have won more games in the series, the Patriots and the Chiefs. Since 2015, only the Patriots have been to more playoff games than the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this is considered the down part of his tenure. The beginning was considered the wild success. Win a Super Bowl in year 2, go back in year 4. The last 4 years, which have been more of the struggle, they've still been a great team. This is where you are a victim of your success, where the standard of excellence is so high that 9-6-1, which is what they were last year, is considered a disaster.
There are a couple things. One, I discredit what you're saying as far as getting credit for winning with another person's players. This is not college, all right? It's not like you on scholarship, you're out recruiting. Those players were drafted by the Pittsburgh front office. Pittsburgh's front office have drafted great players. That's why those coaches have stayed there, because their front office has really supported that. Now, and they won with defense. They didn't win with offense. If he had switched it over and was on the offense side, I've been like, okay. No, but they won with defense. The 2 things against Tomlin, the conduct of his star players, and they haven't been good defensively. Those are the 2 bad marks on a guy. He's one of 5 coaches with no losing seasons his first 12 years in the league. We said, which is the 100th season. That means he's a pretty special coach.
And those other 4 guys, Curly Lambeau's got a stadium named after him. Don Shula, some consider him the greatest coach ever. George Allen, a legend. And Marty Schottenheimer, who for him, he just had repeated playoff failures when the regular season was extraordinary. That's an all-time list right there.
But the thing is, it's easy to win a division when you have the best quarterback in it. and he's had the best quarterback in the division probably for the last 10 years. And that's been the difference between the Steelers and the Ravens, is that the Ravens, they both had great defenses, Hall of Famers on both sides, but they've had the better quarterback, and Ben has been special when it came down to those last-minute drives.
Put some respect on Andy Dalton's name.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.